much on your way to have them adopted, as I understand, ultimately by mid next year. And that would still bring you in the range of early adopters. There are some very early ones. New Zealand, Australia are examples. But many others are still working on those with a perspective of 2011, 2012, 2013. So that will be very positive. And I can only really encourage you to achieve that milestone. There is a lot of support from external organizations and stock markets around the world for using ISAs in audits of listed companies on stock exchanges. And again, I've listed here many names of international organizations that have supported now the clarified ISAs. So this is really more and more becoming the global standard for auditing. But most important is the last line here. If we are listening to concerns about auditing, and you see many critical audit inspection reports around the world from audit inspectors, whether that's in Australia or the UK or the Netherlands or the US or what have you. If you then are reading and asking what are the basic concerns, it's typically about issues that have been thoroughly revised in the clarified ISAs, like applying professional skepticism, not taking the first explanation for granted but asking more, or standing back. That's a key attitude of the profession since its existence. But time and again we need to remind ourselves, and that's now in the clarified ISAs, that you have to apply that. Judgments, another key feature of a profession. Whatever standards you have, in the end it's the individual auditor with his colleagues, and there's a firm supported by the firm to make the significant judgments. And the clarified ISAs deal a lot with that element. And also the communications about those, and communications about deficiencies. And another standard is about group audits. So whenever there are these critical questions about the quality of auditing, the message in this case from the IAASB and IFIC is, and of the member bodies, well, we have a thoroughly revised suite of standards, and now, of course, it's key that it's being implemented in practice. This, of course, you cannot read from over there, but it's the summary of all the auditing standards. And yellow means not only redrafted in the clarity style. Redrafted means that it's now made more clear what is the objective of the standard, what are the requirements, and what is the application material. But yellow means also thoroughly revised for its contents, and I mentioned a couple of elements a minute ago. And this is a specification of those. So those, for those, let's say, professionals that were already familiar with the auditing standards, these are the ones to focus on most, because they contain many new elements. And it's in all areas of the standards, the overarching responsibilities, but also risk assessment and evidence gathering, quality of audit evidence, communications. So that's a very important achievement. And I always feel privileged that I can say that this is a great achievement, because I did not do that. This is my predecessor, John Callas, with the then board, and technical advisors and staff, and I just came on board when it was almost finished. So I think this is really great. So it's now much about adoption, meaning legal implementation or adoption by an audit standards committee, whatever the national arrangements are, but then implementation and practice. And it's not only about the auditing standards, it's also about the quality control standard and the code of ethics. And what is very important is that it's understood and communicated how the clarity ISAs can be applied proportionately to the size and complexity of the entity. And that's a bit of jargon, but it does say each audit is unique. We have the slogan, an audit is an audit, and that means every audit should be of high quality. That's true. But having said that, there's a huge difference between an audit of a large international group or a small entity. And when revising the ISAs, a lot of attention has been paid in particular to SMEs and SMPs. the entities and their practitioners. And you will find many specific considerations in the ISAs dealing with smaller entities or smaller practitioners. We have one of our board members, is a Canadian, Phil Carpethwaite. He is really the S&P member in our board. We have more with a lot of affinity for S&P, SME issues, but he is the key one there. Phil is a partner of a two-partner firm in Canada. And he really teaches us, and many in the world now, how to deal with these clarified ISAs in a small firm. So for example, he has organized a number of luncheon sessions in his firm. Not to use daytime, the morning or the afternoon, but just in between, and he takes his colleagues and staff through the clarified ISAs, just to get them a personal understanding. And he's encouraging them, well, spend some time on reading yourselves through them. It's worthwhile as a professional to invest some time to have an understanding yourself. But then do not take it as the big book that it looks like. But ask yourself the question, what clients do I have in my specific firm? So what of the standards in this whole book are anyhow relevant to my practice? And if you have only small clients, well, typically you would not need group audits or using the work of an internal auditor. So put that aside for a moment. It's good that you know that it's there, but it's not immediately relevant. And then it depends also on the kind of clients that you have. Let's say a sales company is different from a manufacturing company or a service company. So going through that, Phil said, well, I learned that about 200 of, let's say, the overall 600 requirements in the whole suite are really relevant. I really have to go through them to have them understood and to deliver a high quality audit. But another 200, well, that typically varies on the client profile and portfolio that I have. And then another 200 might not at all be relevant to my specific practice. So that's a professional exercise which I think is very encouraging. And in addition, of course, we have to help in particular the smaller practitioners wherever we can. And here the role again of the profession and the institute is very, very important. You can and you need to help each other, and we see many encouraging initiatives around the world. At the IAASB, we do what we can with the help of the wider IFAC staff. And there's a very helpful website that I have mentioned here, where you find a lot of information about individual ISAs and their backgrounds. More and more we produce questions and answers on questions that we receive where we think it's helpful to have something on the website to answer a specific question. But we also have produced modules, video modules. Some 10 are now there, and they explain in 15-20 minutes the essentials, the key features of, in particular, the revised ISAs. And there are also slide packs that take you through these elements. They are freely available from the website or, of course, through the Institute, and they are more and more used in training sessions, education material, etc. And we have a project in which we monitoring the ongoing implementation, as we are willing to learn from that. And finally, but not lastly, I should mention the IFAC S&P committee, and you have such a committee as well. This committee, for which I have a high regard, is focusing specifically on the question how to assist smaller practitioners and the audit of smaller entities. And among others, they have produced guides on the clarified ISAs and the quality control standard, recently revised, and they're also very active in translation support as specific staff from IFAC as well. And we encourage national institutes and national standard setters to share with each other wherever there is something that they think might be helpful for others as well. For example, in the UK, the APB has published a practice note on documentation in a small practice. How do you, in such a practice, deal with documentation requirements in a way that makes sense? Well, that can be of use for anyone who can read English, and otherwise we should try to help translations as well. So that's at least what altogether, not only in the IAASB and IFAC as a whole, with the enormous support from member bodies we are doing on the implementation.